I'm Sabine Mueller, heading DHL Consulting. We are a management and supply chain consultancy of Deutsche Post DHL, and most of our projects are within the group, for the group, but we also consult customers. And for us, the last 3 months were really, really cool. So a lot of things were happening, a lot of things were shaking, and yeah, it was very good. And I would like to share some experiences as well, some of the problems we haven't solved yet with you in this presentation. And I do think we talked a lot about the pandemic and the problems that arise really directly for our supply chains. What I would like to talk about is e-commerce. So I do think that we have all seen what have changed, but the focus of my keynote will be the rise of e-commerce and what is the next level. So what have we seen? And just taking me back, what happened to me personally in the last months. So what we have seen is what happened first was a widespread spread lockdown. So I do think it was a third of the population that was under lockdown, and yeah, I was one of them. And we pretty soon have all been home and looking at our supply chains. We have also seen a slowdown in manufacturing. This means like China's PMI fell by 22% in February, really affecting worldwide all our manufacturing and as well our supply chains. We have seen a shortage in supply. Car manufacturers had to stop production because they were sourcing in Asia, and Asia was under lockdown. We have seen a decline in air freight capacity and prices going up and having shortages. And I do think most of you really handled all this issue on a short term. And we all were busy just trying, like, how do we get our supply chains back on track? And this is something that kept us busy, and we all found very good solutions for it. But there was one other thing that was on the positive side: e-commerce rose. So in a lot of markets, we had up to 50% increase in the e-commerce volumes. For example, we in Germany were back to more than pre-Christmas volumes. And that is something that we all have seen in the COVID times. And that's also something that I'm very, very sure that it will stay. And I do also think that this is something we all should take back and say, like, do we really have adapted our supply chains to the needs of directly delivering to the customers, and also to the needs of the customers in having it pretty soon, like next day or day after? And that's something I would like to share some of my findings, some of my experience, and also ask some of the questions to you if you really have already answers to it. However, let's take a minute to go back. So why did the whole disruption happen to our supply chains? And I do think one major topic was that supply chains in the last years were more and more driven by cost optimization. And if I look back at the discussions I had and if, the projects we did, a lot was on getting costs out. So making supply chains cheaper, but also making them even quicker. And this was the main thing. Resilience was only like something we sometimes looked at, but in most of the supply chains, I'm not sure if you would say yes, that's with us as well. Cost minimization was the main driver. We went to offshore locations, to just-in-time delivery. We also went on like single sourcing because it was much cheaper. But we haven't looked at, is it resilience? So is our supply chain resilience? Are we flexible? Do we also take local sourcing at least as a second option? Do we have enough safety stocks to enable central visibility? And are we flexible in the production and as well in the sourcing? And I do think a lot of us can say, oh yeah, we were much on cost optimizing. And I do think we all knew that the cost efficiency and how we set up our supply chains was in favor of cost, but we deprioritized resilience and as well a very being able to react to like a big change what happened with COVID. And I do think that that's one of the things, and I do think some of the other keynotes will also talk how can we make our supply chains more more resilient. And I do think that that's one of the main learnings. Like, what do we have to change that things like this will not happen again to our supply chains? So that's a question to be answered. And I do think we all have gone through the crisis, and we have a lot of data about what happened and what is now, but we should not keep the same ignorance for the future. So I do think that we all should just go back after we all managed the main part of the crisis and say, what do we have to change? So how are we going to redesign our supply chain? And what are the main things we really would like to change? Looking at one aspect, and that's what I would like to do, looking only at the e-commerce bit and what we want to do, I would just guide you through some of the ideas. So going back, what we have seen in the last months is a significant change in consumer behavior in Europe and the Americas, but also in Asia. So people just found themselves home from one day to the other, for some weeks, for some months, depending on the country. And also we all still have the virus somewhere being present, and we are more afraid of doing some of the things we haven't done before. So going to the doctors is still something I just do if it's really necessary. And what we have seen as consumers more and more go to online consultations for doctors, and we have seen that this has increased. So the paid membership for teledocs online has to increase by 130%, including as well like the sending or the e-commerce or the online order for drugs, what we had not have before. In Germany, for example, 25% of the population worked from home. Coming up with what the first thing I did, I had to order a screen, I had to order like a cool like table and a chair where I can work from home. So a lot of things started as well, like a need started we had not before. Same for ordering groceries or ordering food. That's something I was just always going to buy before. I don't do anymore, so I order it. So it has risen in Germany by 31%, and I would not go back in some of these things. So what we've seen is like people who haven't done it before, but also people who have done it before, increased significantly the money they spend on ordering online. And a lot of people also expect in the future to not go back to the habit they had before. Another very cool example, what I would like to share is home fitness sales increased by 210%. Nintendo Switch sales increased by 100% year over year in the US. So a significant increase in some of the in some of the areas in online sales. So that's what happened. And as well, in some governments also helped to have a stimulus package to increase even consumption further. And people are not going on holiday, so there's some money saved somewhere you can spend online on other goods. So massive increase. But how did this whole change of the consumer behavior play out to our e-commerce market? So what we have seen is that more consumers buy online. So that's the first thing. PayPal has a very huge increase in their silver customers. They call their 60 plus customers. So more people order online. That's the first thing. Significantly more people order online. The second one is the ticket price increases. Walmart has a 16.5% increase in the average ticket price, and new categories, as I already said, are going to be bought online, like sporting goods, home office items, but also drugs and all these things. So this all multiplies. So we have more consumers, they buy more, and they buy different things. And this is the demand side. And on the supply side, we also have seen a significant change. So we have seen more suppliers and significant increase in registrations of Shopify plus 62% and eBay plus 52%. So as well, the supply side, so the all the retailers, the consumer goods, but also the other industries are going to sell or started to sell directly to the customer. We have also seen that the giants like Amazon significantly increased their capacity. So, for example, Amazon hired 175,000 new employees since March only in the US. And but we also have seen that a lot of other companies who already started their online sales really exaggerated during the last months. For example, Walmart and Target increased significantly, and the share of Amazon, if you look at the full market, decreased in the US from 35% in April to 45% before crisis. So what we see is, one side, more demand, on the other side, all companies starting to get into the game and find how they are going or how you're going to sell to the customers. And a lot of industries where you are in are affected, and yeah, that's, I do think, the next step we need to go. One question I always got, and I will just take 2 minutes to discuss on, like, will it stay? So yes, there was COVID, there were lockdowns, and the e-commerce increased. Will it stay? Yes, it will. We looked at different scenarios, and the good news is, even if we are now through the biggest problem, we will recover soon as Europe or as Asia or the US. So if we have already passed the storm, currently there is a first estimate that we will have at least 25% more e-commerce sales, and in some of the countries it's even higher. So yes, it will stay, even if we think very positive. If we think about a second wave or a delayed recovery, if we do think about a sustained pandemic, so lockdowns coming back again, or as well another scenario we looked at as a false recovery or a second wave and a second shutdown, it will be a minimum 30 to 50%. So one of the winners out of the whole pandemic is e-commerce, and it will not go back to pre-crisis, because a lot of consumers just found out that it's very easy, it's convenient, you get all the stuff next day, you get it even cheaper. So it's something that really made a big change in how the consumers behave. And if you look at the stock of the winners, Shopify, Amazon, eBay, and JD.com, with stock price increases by more than 100%. We have the adapters like Walmart, stock price was the same, but the losers are the ones who were offline before and stayed offline. So this is how it looks for retail. However, it's nothing that's not that's nothing you also need to ask for your supply chain. So my question would be to all of you: are you ready for the new e-commerce game? So have you started to think about redesigning your supply chain, or have you already redesigned your supply chain? Or are you still dependent on marketplace giants? So are you currently selling your products only to the end customers through marketplace giants? And do you want to keep it with an increase in your sales, so the percentage of online sales is growing? Will you keep it? Or are you going to do it on your own? And are you prepared? Are you prepared to deliver directly to your end customers without having really high cost? Are you prepared to have next day delivery or the day after? Because that's what the consumers want. Are you prepared to deliver it? Do you have the customer data? Do you know your customers? Do you have a good demand forecasting? And do you have any idea where the demand will happen, so that you have a good idea where your inventory should be? Is your supply chain ready to handle like reverse logistics? So can you really handle all the returns? And can you also, are you able to have a click and collect, because that's also a trend, or do you want to offer it? So I do think the first important step in the whole e-commerce game is having a decentralized fulfillment network with inventories located close to the end customer, and that's something that is really, really key. And that's, if you haven't done, I think that's the first thing you should think about. And let's go through one of the case studies. So one of the customers we discussed with was a producer of luxury espresso machines, and they were selling mostly B2B. And they entered the European market and built a distribution center in the Czech Republic. And from the Czech Republic, they were distributing in all of the European countries into their stores and into their sellers they had. They decided to have a cool online site, and they decided to go directly to the customer, which worked out pretty well at the beginning. So they also now sell direct to the consumers for having an own web page. And what they started with was just distributing as well from Czech. So they send like the packages or the coffee machines on express shipments to whole of Europe with a good next day delivery. However, costs were significantly too high. So sending each single coffee machine from the Czech Republic to each location in Europe was just a huge cost for the last mile delivery. So what we were discussing with them was just having decentralized warehousing. So they looked at their customers, they looked at their data and said, like, UK and France are the ones where we do have a lot of customers. In France, around the Paris area, in the UK, around the greater area of London. And that's where we said, like, that's where they set up inventory. So they were collaborating with a 3PL. At that point was one of the big ones with a logo with the red and yellow ones. And what we did is we were using existing warehouses for other customers and set up a small area for this customer that the customer was able to fulfill closer to the customers, and use local normal parcel distributors to also deliver on the promised next day or next day plus one, bringing down the cost significantly, and as well delivering a good value at a much lower cost level, plus having a very good view as well on their own customer. So this was one of the example, and there are many more. This is a Europe one, but the same holds true for all the other regions. And one thing I forgot to mention before was we also see cross-border movements increasing. So customers years ago were ordering domestic. So I'm ordering with German shops, and most of my orders are domestic orders. This changes. A lot of sellers also offer cross-border, and now I don't know anymore if I buy something on eBay, if it's dispatched or if the seller sits in the UK, in France or somewhere. So cross-border is also getting more and more important, bringing us back to high delivery cost for the last mile, if you don't have your inventory closer to your end customers. So that's on one of the case examples. So what would you need to do to play in the new e-commerce game? And I do think one is get to know your customers, so understand your customer experiences and have data on your customer if they shop online, offline, and have a good as well idea when they shop, so good predictions. You should also harmonize your sales channels and exploit the whole customer data, and make sure that you have high data management standards. So that's all on knowing the demand and knowing where the demand will happen. Then you have to think about your operating model. So what is the right on decentralized versus centralized inventory? Where are your customers? When do you have to bring your inventory closer to the customers? you have to adjust your IT backend, and you also maybe need to adapt your existing infrastructure. So a lot of things to check and to think about to adapt to the new e-commerce challenge. The third one is, how do you do it? I do think start small. Try it. Start with a minimal viable product, test it in small markets, and then quickly roll it out and improve in bigger markets. So this is, I think, where you have to go, but I do think you really have to touch and discuss with your salespeople, with the product people. So it's not only a topic for supply chain, it's also something as a whole concept needs to just, all the different areas, functions need to work together. Yeah, I do think that one thing is clear, e-commerce is one of the big things, and I also do think that that was a positive thing of COVID. It just accelerated it, and I do think that we have a chance now to change, and we should use this change. And the chance as well to make bigger things. We should use this chance to rethink our supply chains, question some of the beliefs we had before, make our supply chains more sustainable, but also change them to capture the true value of the e-commerce. So that's what I would recommend. I'm here, so whenever you have a question, reach out to me. Unfortunately, I'm not standing in front of a big plenum. Unfortunately, you can't ask your questions right now. However, I'm happy to get your questions either via this format, via LinkedIn. I'm also happy to do follow-ups. Thanks for listening, and yeah, hope to talk to you all.